As of today, Attack on Titan has ended. After nearly 10 years, the anime has come to a close. And honestly, I don't really know how I feel about it. See, on one hand, I love Attack on Titan. Like many of you, Attack on Titan was my first anime. I started it back in 2014, and after the first season had finished airing, I was patiently waiting for the following seasons to air. And at that time, I just couldn't get enough of it. I loved the characters, I loved the lack of plot armor, I thought Levi was super dope, I thought Eren, while slightly whiny, had his moments, and more than anything, I just thought the entire concept of people trapped in walls fighting giant naked zombies by flying through the air with swords was really, really awesome. And I still stand by this. All in all, Attack on Titan just had this air about it that not many other shows have been able to achieve. And specifically, those first 3 seasons were genuinely something special. From the extremely unique opening episode where we see something that we understand will happen later down the road, just for it to occur 10 minutes later, to the bittersweet conclusion of Season 3 where we look at Eren as he looks across the water with an expression that tells you all you need to know about the future of this show. Point is, Attack on Titan was on an absolute roll, and everybody loved it. So what happened? How did the show that everyone loved, a show that could do no wrong, become so polarizing? How did a show that was universally loved become a show that still a large amount of people hate? Well, it's complicated. So complicated, in fact, that in order to answer this question, I'm going to have to look at a lot of things and really take an Attack on Titan as a whole. And the first thing I want to take into account is the anime's super bizarre release schedule. Attack on Titan's first episode, titled To You in 2000 Years, The Fall of Shiganshina, aired on April 7th, 2013, and was an immediate hit. And between April 7th, 2013 and September 29th, 2013, which was the final episode of Season 1, Attack on Titan had gone from a somewhat popular anime to an absolute titan. And if you were watching Attack on Titan at the time, you know what I'm talking about. Back in 2013, this was all anybody was speaking about. At school, basketball practice, work. Hell, even my dad knew about Attack on Titan because someone at the firehouse was talking about it. This show was huge. And once Season 1 had ended, everyone was just itching for more. And this, my friends, is where Attack on Titan's first roadblock appeared. Season 2 just took way too long to release. With the first episode of Season 2 airing on April 1st of 2017, a whole 4 years after the first episode of Season 1 aired. And holy shit, did the fans really feel this time. Waiting for the second season of Attack on Titan was genuinely unbearable. It lost a ton of steam, with some fans just switching to the manga, and others just forgetting about it entirely. Hell, I know some people personally, today, who watched it back in 2013, and never picked it back up due to this crazy hiatus. And to make matters worse, it's not like this weird release schedule just ended with Season 2. After Season 3, it took another 2.5 years for Season 4 to air, and since Season 4, they have declared that this is going to be the final season, like 3 times, and have somehow managed to stretch out 40 relatively short chapters into 3 fat years worth of content. And while at face value, this may seem like a smart business tactic, this very elongated release schedule of 130 chapters equaling 10 years worth of time has definitely left a sour taste in a lot of fans' mouths. And this is only the first issue of many that I'm going to be bringing up, and while it's definitely the smallest issue of the bunch, it still counts and has definitely had an impact on Attack on Titan's legacy as a whole. The next major factor we need to discuss is certain characters going directions that some people, myself included, aren't too happy about. And yes, we will be discussing Eren, but that's going to be its own longer segment. For now, I would like to focus on some other characters that people felt didn't get the justice that they deserved, starting with Mikasa. At the start of Attack on Titan, Mikasa was almost universally loved by everyone. She was everybody's favorite character. She was super intelligent, cunning, badass, heroic, and overall just a super cool character that also happened to have a soft spot for Eren. However, in the later seasons, especially after the time skip when we get to Marley, these character traits slowly but surely kind of dwindle away. I mean, she's still her, don't get me wrong, but there's a noticeable decline in her character after season 3. She went from a really dynamic character that had a lot to her to just another Eren fan. What I mean by this is after season 3, any and all development regarding Mikasa is all about Eren. All she talks about is Eren. The only lines she gets are about Eren, or simply just saying his name over and over again, kind of like Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. And all in all, she just kind of loses what made her special in the earlier seasons. Granted, that's not to say she didn't have any redeeming qualities post season 3. I actually think her scenes with Eren during the final episode were genuinely amazing. But between season 3 and today's episode, she just hasn't gotten much to work with. And that is really saddening to me, and I feel like cheapens a lot of her development as a whole. And sadly, she isn't the only character to get this treatment. In fact, the next character I'm going to talk about gets it much worse. And this one in particular really hurts me. You see, Armin was my favorite character throughout the first 3 seasons of Attack on Titan. He was kind of an anomaly in the anime world at the time because he really wasn't super cool. He really wasn't badass. And as far as the nerdy characters go in anime, they're typically not the fan favorites. But you see, Armin was different. During its early Attack on Titan, Armin is the most successful character. He is the one who draws up all the plans during early Attack on Titan. I mean, just think about it. How many times during season 1, 2, and 3 are the Survey Corps and our characters at large in a genuinely horrible situation, and it is Armin who pulls them out of it, with nothing but sheer brain power. Specifically, during the peak of the show, Return to Shiganshina, he is the MVP. He is the one to figure out everything regarding Reiner and Berthold. He is the one who came up with a plan to beat them and the Beast Titan. And as if that's not enough, he was the one who ended up making the sacrifice play. Hell, even as early as season 1, he was constantly helping Eren find his way, and he's the one who so geniusly discovers Annie's true identity. I would go as far as to say that Armin is just as important as Eren in the earlier seasons. And this is reinforced by Eren's final moments being shared with Armin, where they discuss who Eren truly is, and how Armin is the one who inspired Eren's dreams all those years ago. And while I love this moment, I honestly can't stand what happens to Armin after he becomes a Titan Shifter. After he's saved via eating Berthold, he becomes a shell of the character he was before. And yes, I know the defense for this is he felt helpless and thought that they chose wrong in saving him over Erwin. But guys, come on. After the time skip, up until the last 15 minutes of today's episode, he is legitimately useless. He gets no screen time anymore. The quick-witted tactician is for all intents and purposes gone. And man, he just... this one really bothers me. Armin was a fan favorite and my personal favorite character, and for him to go from the most important and impactful character in the show to basically a side character was genuinely heartbreaking to witness. The next person I want to talk about is Levi. And not gonna lie to you, I actually think Levi has a really solid story arc from start to finish, with no real tragedy in his character writing. My only complaint here is him getting mortally wounded by Zeke was straight bullshit and was only placed in the story so that he wouldn't end the rumbling before it ever even got started. He's still a great character today, and while the moment annoys me, like, it's not the end of the world. Still annoyed me though. Alright, and with all that being said, let's talk about Eren. Eren is too well written for his own good. Now, I know that it's kind of a bold statement, but hear me out. Eren's story is one of pure stagnation. He is a masterclass in how to successfully write a character who appears one way, but is actually another. From his character designs to motives, everything about Eren is meant to throw you for a loop. For example, when we first meet Eren, he's this young, awkward-looking child who yells and throws tantrums. He's always crying and is just kind of like really, really annoying. And this childlike state is a sign of weakness for Eren. So, when the time skip happens and his character design changes, it's symbolic of a change in Eren. His hair is longer, he's grown like half a foot, he's better looking, his eyes and entire demeanor has changed, and he feels much more grown up and stoic. His speech is sharper and more fluid. His thought process seems to be more laser focused, and overall, he just seems to be a lot more mature and grown up, both physically and mentally. However, as we have seen from this last episode where he's shown crying like a child again, this couldn't have been any further from the truth. So I'm going to make an assumption here, which isn't something I really love doing, but I think it fits. When the manga ended and people got the scene of Eren crying, people lost their minds. And I'm going to assume anime fans are going to have a very similar reaction. People were claiming that this scene was character suicide and that the scene didn't make any sense and much, much more. Fans were legitimately sending Isayama death threats over this one scene. And this, my friends, is the first major example of the Attack on Titan fanbase not understanding a major theme of the story. Eren is not an amazing character because he changed over time. He's an amazing character because he never changed. And it's not like this idea just came out of left field. No, there are examples of this everywhere. The first major one, showing that Eren had never changed, is, go figure, I don't know, the most famous panel in the entire manga, maybe even in manga history. And if you don't know what I'm talking about the Freedom panel. In this panel, which is basically the climax of Eren's character, he's presented to us as a child, signifying that after all this time, he's never changed. He's still that insane child that we knew in the early seasons. Therefore, it makes perfect sense that he would have a meltdown when he thinks about his crush possibly being with someone else. Because again, he's still a child at heart. And going back to the Freedom panel, I want to use it to segue into my next point regarding the AOT fandom not understanding their character. Now, I'm going to say something that some of you aren't going to like, but bear with me. Eren was never free. Again, you see this panel right here? Eren is presented as a kid, soaring above the clouds, declaring that he is finally free. He has finally achieved freedom. But do you notice anything odd about the clouds? Well, if you've been paying attention, they're not clouds. That's Titan's theme. And this isn't on accident. This theme is meant to symbolize the lie that is Eren's freedom. Eren isn't a character that represents freedom. He's the personification of false freedom. Further represented through his breakdown after Sasha's death, because he realized that with all the power in the world, he was still unable to do anything about his friend's death. And in order to put the nail in the coffin regarding Eren and the concept of freedom, I want to go back to a specific line from a side character from Season 3. Kenny. While on his deathbed, Kenny says this: "We're all drunk on something." Meaning that everyone, regardless of your goals or life as a whole, we're all slaves to something in life. And in this scene, he's talking specifically about Eren. Eren is a slave to the idea of freedom itself. When seeing the future, seeing the outcome, seeing the death, he decides that this is the only way. He completely gives in to his fate and lets go of any chance of acquiring true freedom. The moment Eren acquired the strength to finally be free was the same moment he lost his freedom forever. So as you can see, Eren is genuinely an extremely well-written character. So some of you may be asking, what does he have to do with Attack on Titan's legacy being imperfect? And sadly, it's not really his fault. It's his fans that are to blame. Let me give you an example. In the 4th season of Attack on Titan, a reoccurring theme is the acknowledgement that Eren and the people within Paradise Island aren't the only victims of the ongoing conflict. The show highlights the suffering of countless individuals beyond the walls, emphasizing that there are no true winners in war, only more victims. This is particularly evident during the key scenes of the rumbling, where innocent civilians, including women, children, the elderly, and the disabled, become tragic victims of the war. The series, at its core, conveys an anti-war message, as Isayama seeks to illustrate the inherent evil of war and the lack of true innocence among these participating in it. However, a noticeable bias exists within a significant portion of the larger Attack on Titan fandom. Particularly among Eren's supporters, many fans are wholeheartedly embracing Eren's plan for genocide, justifying it with themes like, he's doing it for his family, and they drew blood first. This extreme fandom support for Eren's actions has begun to even manifest in the real world through movements like the Jaegerists. This biased perspective has led to some serious problems, with some individuals being genuine advocates for violence and war if they believe the cause is just. Additionally, it has festered toxicity and hate within the fan base in many different categories, particularly online, with my personal experiences including receiving numerous death threats and attempts to contact my school, all because I expressed negative views about Eren. This situation highlights how a complex character, when taken out of context by an immature fandom, can become a significant issue for many people. And the worst part of it all is, it's not like this movement has lost any steam. No, it keeps getting worse. Eren fans and Eren PFPs are just a plague that is spreading amongst the anime and manga circles that are just a humongous beacon for racist, homophobic, and just degenerate individuals to flock to whenever they want to speak about something that is just absolutely horrendous. And like I said before, the most tragic part about this is that this isn't Eren's fault. This isn't the writing. This isn't any issue with an Attack on Titan. It's the people who have consumed it. Attack on Titan, and especially Eren, have become way too big and are way too well written for the mass population that they have hit. And it has sadly tainted the long-term legacy of Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan's legacy's biggest problem is simply that it just got way too big, way too fast, and reached a lot of very immature and inconsiderate individuals that are ruining the show for a lot of people. Now, with all that being said, I want to say I still love Attack on Titan. It's an amazing story, and since it's my first anime, I owe a lot to it. It's given me more than I ever thought a show could, And all in all, it seriously does, for the most part, live up to the hype. However, it's not perfect. There are some definite flaws, and I don't think enough people speak about them. And sadly, due to these flaws and the overly toxic and hateful fandom, I just don't think Attack on Titan's legacy is as great as it could have been. And that is a damn shame. If you disagree with anything I said in this video, please let me know in the comments below. I'm always open to discussion. And if you liked what I had to say, you can tell me about that as well. As always, thank you all for your time. Let me know what you think, and have a great day.